I want to talk a little bit. I want to talk about the Infernal Comedy, and I want to talk and ask you.
Și vreau să vă rog
how it started.
Să vă întreb cum a început, de unde a început
and how come today
și cum se face că astăzi.
So I would love to come and see whatever it is, to see each second of the performance.
Este atât de încântător să vezi fiecare secundă.
There is the story of the very beginning of this piece. Usually a piece is written or is existing and you perform it, but here the piece resulted from a meeting. I'm not only conducting a Vienna orchestra, I have a small orchestra in Los Angeles, and after one of our performances many years ago,
Los Angeles, și după unul dintre spectacolele noastre, am avut o întâlnire particulară și am avut ocazia să cunosc pe John Malkovich prima dată și a fost o discuție despre ce ar putea face o compoziție clasică pentru film și teatru. Și m-am gândit, nu avem o piesă gata pentru această combinație, dar ne vom gândi la ceva, să avem o piesă. Pentru că uneori a trebuit să insist ca să găsesc o temă interesantă. Cu ajutorul unui prieten comun care ne-a făcut legătura inițial. În cele din urmă ea ne-a dat ideea unei prezentări de carte despre biografia acestui criminal în serie. Și cazul lui Jack Unterweger este oarecum o amintire vie pentru că s-a întâmplat doar acum 15 ani și sunt mulți oameni care l-au cunoscut. John a spus, ar putea fi acesta subiectul nostru și aveam deci tema, dar încă nu aveam piesa. Și apoi l-am întrebat pe un prieten cu care lucram mult.
He is not here because he is the director of the famous play in Salzburg Festival Jedermann, which has the premiere tonight. Hopefully not with too much rain because it's an outdoor performance.
Sperăm să nu plouă prea mult pentru că în spectacolul în aer liber și el a început să scrie o piesă despre Jack Unterweger. Aveam în minte această combinație între muzică și teatru permanent. Și cred că a făcut o treabă foarte bună, foarte mult sub influența lui John Malkovich, care a contribuit cu opinii și până la urmă a fost mulțumit de text pe care a putut să-l și schimbe puțin. A vrut mai întâi să și regizeze, dar apoi, pentru că este un monolog uriaș pentru un actor, am avut primul spectacol într-o sală mică din Santa Monica și apoi mai târziu o producție la Viena, într-o clădire ca aceasta. Și apoi piesa s-a bucurat de succes și mă bucur și pentru compoziție, pentru că piesa este atât de vie și acum,
a new interest in everybody here, in the musicians who play in the orchestra, in the singers, and I think we always get inspired by the action, by the acting, by the text, and for us it's really a pleasure to perform it after many years again and to perform it here in the cultural
capital. Să jucăm din nou după atâția ani aici la Capitala Culturală Europeană.
Thank you very, very much. When you decided to put the whole music, when you have chosen the music, you chosen together.
In some ways, the music was very inspiring for us because in some ways the music, the topics of these pieces are just like contemporary topics. There are many operas where suffering women, women who are tortured through physical torture, through psychological torture, they were crying out the anger and the
dolor in
specific areas. And there's a whole topic of these areas where a woman just tells us about her fate. And in some ways this piece is Scena di Berenice. Scena, it's a short scene. It's not a whole opera. And in some ways we found many pieces which were just fitting in an almost contemporary way to the topic of the piece. And even today I'm surprised this is music written 250, 300 years ago.
Este muzică scrisă acum 250-300 de ani.
Historic and it's baroque music and it's classical
muzică dorică, baroc, clasică.
Text and the emotions in
this music
are very much fitting to the
se
contemporary story
of cu cele contemporane, cu povestea pe care vrem să o spunem.
Mr. Malkovich,
Domnule Malkovich,
how come you decided to do this character? How come you decided to go into this story?
Să alegeți această poveste.
I had some interest in the story of Jack Unterweger and actually thought about doing a
M-a interesat povestea lui Jack Unterweger înainte de a face
in Austria and in Germany
în Austria, în Germania,
on television and things like that, and so knew
din ce am văzut la televizor.
And when Martin and I first started talking, we had other ideas.
Am început să vorbesc cu Martin, aveam inițial alte idei.
We talked about doing a story of all the Austrian and of course German emigres to California during at the end of the Weimar Republic.
Austrieci și germani.
And we talked about doing a thing, I think, of Thomas Mann's brother, I think it was, Heinrich. But the ideas were kind of dry. And I thought something like Unterweger would interest people much more. Of course, people come to this piece, many of whom not only are not fans of classical music, they don't know anything about it.
Mulți dintre ei nu sunt fani ai muzicii clasice, ci nici nu o cunosc.
I wanted something that had some contemporary meaning and something that could sort of make a bond between an audience watching who knows nothing of the music of 200-300 years ago.
Și nu știe nimic despre muzica de acum 200-300 de ani.
And I think Mihai Sturminger, who Martin mentioned, our colleague and director and writer, wrote a fantastic first draft that seemed to work
un prim draft excelent care părea să funcționeze excelent. Nu prea am schimbat aproape nimic.
Occasionally that I add depending on where we are and where we play or something, but really it's really basically unchanged
neschimbată versiunea
from the first staging in a certain way in California and Santa Monica. It's much better, it's deeper, it's denser.
Acum mai profundă, mai densă.
I think Martin and I and Mickey was there for most of them. I think we've done over 150 shows now, but of course 150 shows, as you well know, in theater terms, is not a lot of shows.
Nu înseamnă foarte mult. Nu e un număr foarte mare.
Kind of starts to find its place.
Începe să-și găsească locul.
I don't know how many sort of inveterate theater goers there are here, but it's always very funny to me that a critic comes and sees one show and writes a review, and of course they write a review as best they can to what they see once in front of them. But of course, a play or a piece like this, we can call it a play, we can call it a piece, we can call it a kind of opera, whatever it is.
putem să zicem piesă, putem să zicem operă, este ceva viu, este organic, se schimbă permanent, se adaptează constant. Deci 150 de reprezentații nu înseamnă un număr așa de mare.
And that's over, we toured 5.5 years with the Infernal Comedy after it first. We had our first reading, was that 2008 or 9?
În
2008 in Santa Monica in
am avut
California.
prima
And we
reprezentație
toured
în
it
Santa Monica
pretty consistently
și
until
am făcut un
2015.
turneu destul
But
de
in the
consecvent,
meantime, we also
dar
did
între
another
timp
piece about
făceam și altă
Casanova,
piesă,
or 214 maybe it was. But we also developed with Michael and Martin and the orchestra a piece about Casanova, which we toured for 2.5 years, and then a third piece which we did
și o a treia piesă pe care am făcut-o
16 maybe, called Just Call Me God, which was another piece without the orchestra in this case, but Martin is also a quite renowned organist, and so that piece we did in Europe only in the big philharmonics that have a giant organ. And what appealed to me, why? Well, because I didn't know anything about
pentru
it,
că nu știam
and
nimic,
because meaning I had absolutely zero background in classical music, like
despre
many
asta nu
people.
aveam deloc cunoștință de muzică clasică.
I grew up with folk music and
Eu am
pop
crescut
music,
cu muzică folk și
and
pop,
then eventually probably world music, but I had no background in
și
classical
apoi
music. And
world music, dar nu
once
clasică.
we started doing the piece, I realized
Odată ce am
what
început să facem piesa, mi-am dat seama
power it had,
ce putere avea,
and what
ce forță avea
scope and force the music had.
și ce forță avea muzica.
So I kind of really stumbled on it by accident, but I like learning
Cumva am
about
dat
things
peste ea
I
din
don't
greșeală, dar
know.
îmi
I
place să
don't
învăț despre
dislike that.
lucruri
I
noi.
like that. And I don't mind that I don't know anything.
Și nu mă deranjează faptul că nu știam inițial nimic. Sunt multe lucruri pe care nu le știm.
So that appealed to me, and I love doing all of these pieces. I don't so much love travel anymore,
nu-mi place așa de mult să
which is
călătoresc.
not so much when I get somewhere, but
Nu neapărat
the
când ajung
going
ceva și
is not
călătoria în
very
sine.
pleasant often. But and the world has changed a lot since we started these pieces. But
de când am făcut inițial aceste piese,
to
dar
be perfectly honest, I mostly love them now because of the
îmi plac
music.
și mai mult acum,
And
mai
now
ales
we
din cauza
have,
muzicii.
we always had very good sopranos, but we have two
Întotdeauna am avut
fantastic
soprane foarte
sopranos
bune, dar am avut două
who
soprane fantastice
sing beautifully, act beautifully,
care cântă
who
frumos,
don't
joacă
mind what
frumos.
happens on stage. They don't really care much.
Nu le pasă cu adevărat ce se întâmplă pe
They go
scenă.
with whatever happens. And so for me, they're a kind of perfect duo, because I don't really much plan what happens, and I don't really much worry about what happens.
Nu îmi fac prea multe griji ce se
Of
întâmplă.
course, you always have
Desigur că întotdeauna
the scope of the music,
amploarea
that
muzicii,
the music can't be interfered with, because that's really the motor of this piece.
Muzica este motorul acestei piese și se întrepătrunde cu piesa. Și de ce ai vrea această întrepătrundere? Dar am învățat de la început, la repetițiile pentru această piesă, că această muzică este
music and this kind of music,
și acest tip de muzică,
după cum it's really like being hit with a moving house.
So you have to be very, very careful how you
interact with it,
cum interacționezi cu ea,
complement
ce să
it,
eviți, ce să
possibly if
completezi,
that's not an incredibly arrogant hope.
Dacă nu e o speranță incredibil de arogantă, așa de a putea să aduci o completare.
But how you move with it.
Dar cum te miști împreună cu ea?
Around it.
Ne bucurăm de viață, învățăm să trăim.
And I'm so impressed, and I was very impressed that you never give up working on stage. And I want to ask you about this.
Sunt impresionată de faptul că nu ați renunțat să lucrați pe scenă și vreau să vă învăț, vreau să vă întreb despre importanța acestui lucru.
Well, I grew up in theater.
Am crescut în lumea teatrului.
I'd compare it to if I were a musician.
Dacă aș fi muzician,
getting known for doing movies is like
faptul că am devenit cunoscut pentru film este ca și cum un pianist devine cunoscut pentru cum cântă la saxofon sau la oboi. Ceea ce sunt instrumente minunate, dar eu sunt actor de teatru. Eu vin din lumea teatrului și n-am părăsit niciodată, de fapt. N-am încetat să regizez, să joc. Am plecat de la universitate, când am plecat de la universitate și am început teatru. Și nu văd niciun motiv să mă opresc. Pentru că teatrul este,
I think, such a beautiful, ephemeral, very difficult, and normally very unsatisfactory art.
Este o artă atât de frumoasă, efemeră și până la urmă profund nesatisfăcătoare. Dar aș spune, dacă oamenii spun că e bine, zic și eu, ok. Dar dacă
if I thought something was really good,
then I think the audience would say, they wouldn't applaud at the end, they would just say, okay, start again. Oamenii n-ar aplauda la sfârșit, ci ar zice, mai vrem încă o dată. That always tells me there's always much room for improvement. And this is not a difficult thing for me to say. It's not nu mi-e greu să spun asta, nu e o formă de modestie sau de umilință, e un adevăr. Nu-mi imaginez că va veni un moment în care voi înceta să mai fac teatru, pentru că teatrul înseamnă casă, acasă pentru mine. I'm on tour with another piece with other colleagues, and another piece with other colleagues, and another cu diferiți colegi.
So this one I particularly love. Îmi place în mod deosebit pentru că I think now we have a really it has matured and we have a ajuns la maturitate. The ideal group working on it always because
și s-a lucrat la ea destul.
And Susan, I think I worked with 26 or 24 different sopranos.
Înainte am lucrat cu 25, 26 de soprane diferite și toate aveau calități excelente.
It's good to work consistently with the same people.
Dar e bine să lucrezi consecvent cu aceiași oameni.
Last night was our first show in a year. But they come very prepared and very ready
foarte pregătiți.
Work. So it's always
și întotdeauna
a very interesting piece to perform, and a piece which I think has a lot of odd power.
Și care are o forță foarte mare.
This is also a very important reason to underline why
the Infernal Comedy comedia infernală
is, as we read and also as we see, the peak of the European cultural capital. Talking about theater. This is very important. So important. I want to ask you about being acting and directing. They are complementary.
jocul actoricesc și regia sunt complementare? Nu chiar. Cred că sunt părți diferite ale creierului.
I mean, I think it's good for a director to know what actors do and can do, and it's good to know what actors go through. In all honesty, it doesn't particularly interest me.
Nu mă interesează în mod deosebit, pentru că
you know, when I even do a rehearsal,
atunci când eu fac o repetiție,
I want to do the performance. I don't
vreau să
want
fac spectacolul,
to
nu vreau
things for the sake of doing them.
Să fac lucruri doar de dragul de a le face, pentru că se uită regizorul. Dar unii actori trec printr-un proces întreg. Toată lumea are o metodă, altă metodă, o altă manieră.
So for me, it's not a huge help to be a director. It's just not the same side of the brain.
Să fiu și regizor, nu e aceeași parte a creierului.
Thank you so much for being here, first of all.
Mulțumesc foarte mult că sunteți aici, în primul rând.
I must underline the fact that I think that for 2 days,
Timisoara is not only the cultural capital of Romania, of Europe, I think is of the world, because I had so many phones and messages asking when is going to be this meeting and to follow it on Facebook and so on. And it's quite impressive that you said you had 150 shows up to now, and 3 of them are going to be here in Timisoara, so how important is culture here? And we have acest lucru este important.
We have theater, we have music, we have also costumes, because you've met through a costume designer, and we also have books now, because books on the stage, yes, we've seen what it is in the books and so on. And I want to underline the fact that they didn't say do it again, but last night they shouted during the standing ovation, they shouted bis, which in Romanian means encore. Say they would like so much to have a never-ending story. So think about it. It was really wonderful, and the fact that you included also Timisoara and everything that you have in there, I think it was absolutely extraordinary. And I have a question. What do you call it? Infernal comedy? Because I was just thinking. So tomorrow I'm going to be in the Inferno after meeting Saint Peter, because I imagine Saint Peter like you. That's for sure.
Sfântul Petru, pentru că și eu îmi imaginez pe tine. Nu știu dacă eu pot cel mai bine să răspund sau Martin. Eu aș zice...
You know, it's very funny, Jack Unterweger, the subject of
foarte interesant că Jack Unterweger,
personajul principal, he used to go a lot to a cafe in Vienna called Cafe Englander, where I have been many times, because I've spent some time in Vienna working with Martin.
Unde am fost de multe ori.
And playing there, etc. Because 2 of our pieces rehearsed in Vienna, and then of course played in Vienna more than once, etc. And all 3 played in Vienna. But I mean, I assumed it had something to do with the fact that once a waiter at the Cafe Englander came over to me and told me he had seen the piece, he thought it was good, but that I was a lot less charming than Jack Unterweger. I think that's the infernal comedy part.
Aceea este partea de comedie infernală.
You know, it's not shocking to me that people like that can be very charming, because that's how they get what they want.
We have our own,
and get what they need to feed their beast. I once met met a Prussian aristocrat during the shooting of a film, who had gone back to what had been her castle, and they had owned something like 250 square kilometers of what is formerly Prussia. And that's where Hermann Göring used to go hunting twice a year. And I asked her, and how is he? He must have been very charming. And she said, yes, of course, very charming. The kids loved him. He picked up every conversation from the year before, etc. So this notion you see of this kind of utter, obvious villainy takes a lot of confusion away in retrospect, let's say, or after the fact, but it's not really how life works. Life is infinitely more complex.
Viața este infinit mai complexă.
I can assure you that you are charming, that's for sure, because everybody says he's walking. Yes, hopefully, okay. I wrote my will last night. My last will and testimony. And everybody was so happy here in Timisoara that you walk in the city, that you smile, that you are such a huge star, and on the other hand, you are such an extraordinary person. And I think that is quite a privilege. And on the other hand, the fact that we had also last night the music, you know, in Romania, the first day of New Year's Eve, it's always music from Austria. So we felt last night like a new beginning in the theater, and it was really extraordinary. And you had so many fans in the hall, but also the fans you see like that, because it's very hot in here. But they were so happy to be here. No place, no hotel in Timisoara, just because you were here in the hope not only to see you in the theater, because there are not enough seats in here, but in the hope to have a glance of you. So it's so good for the capital city of Timisoara, and thank you so much for being here.
Amândoi îmbătrânim, suntem de aceeași vârstă, dar toată lumea, nu doar noi doi.
It's not just us.
Nu doar noi doi.
Yes. And I am interested
și mă interesează
how an actor, an aging actor,
cum un actor în vârstă
accomplish this difficult task
a reușit să îndeplinească această sarcină dificilă pe scenă.
To be a gymnast,
să fie practic un gimnast pe scenă. Cum reușiți toate aceste lucruri dificile?
Thank you.
Mulțumesc.
I don't, you know, I was fairly athletic as a young
Am fost destul de atletic
man, as a boy
eram
and a
tânăr.
young man. I mean, I played football and basketball and baseball and tennis.
Jucam fotbal.
I've been mostly lucky. I have bad knees and had many knee operations. But,
am avut probleme cu genunchii și multe operații la genunchi.
This work is rigorous physically, so you have to be ready to do.
Trebuie să fii pregătit fizic. Această muncă
and you have to be like most things in life.
Este solicitantă fizic.
Really, most things in life are just a matter of luck. So you have to be lucky, of course.
Și multe lucruri din viață țin de noroc. Trebuie să ai noroc.
You have 150 shows.
Pentru că ai făcut 150 de spectacole.
Remember people after you leave.
Îi mai ții minte pe oameni după ce pleci de la teatru, după un spectacol? Sau mai ții legătura cu
I'm in contact with a number of colleagues, some of our singers. I'm still in contact with Marie Arnett, who was one of our earliest singers, not one of the first two. But probably she was the third Marie, I think, and then Kirsten.
A treia cântăreață pe care am avut-o.
Marie, I remember well because she went on tour. She had a little one-year-old baby, Nora, so I was sort of appointed babysitter, but Nora didn't always approve of my methods. But yeah, of course.
I have two questions.
Am două întrebări.
Probably everybody from here would say that we love you, and as in every single love, we have different reasons for starting a love. My reason for loving you is that picture, iconic picture that you have with the pigeons. I would love if you were willing to share us the experience of doing that picture. This would be the first question, please.
Oh, funny. Boy, I'm bad with photographic experiences, but my memory of it is it was sometime in the 2000s. I would say it might have been 2017, but it might have been a previous trip to Los Angeles, which could have been in 2013 to 14. It was in a big warehouse. They had a lot of, quote, trained pigeons, which is like saying trained actors, who may say they're trained, but are basically going to do whatever it is they do. And I don't remember the photographer. It was a great photo, and I think a very funny idea. I never really understood why. But, so that's really my memory of it. That's really, and it was in a big, it must have been some kind of warehouse. I don't think it was a real studio.
Yeah, but was it difficult to deal with birds? I mean, what's your relationship with animals? Were they cheating on you?
Probably.
I deal with birds.
Just like anyone else.
Like a
lot of directors.
Society?
I don't really have great I like birds. I only really had a relationship with one bird in my life, which was Tito's parrot, Coco. And I saw him last summer, and he was very angry at his trainer because she hadn't brought him peanuts on the previous visit. So he refused to come out, and this sounds unbelievable. But when he heard my voice, he, they recognize, remember everything. And Tito speaks 5 languages. Coco, Tito's parrot, speaks 5 languages. And he heard my voice and came out, and so I could give him some peanuts, but he refused to look at his trainer or acknowledge her in any way. She was just like completely dissed. And I met him years before in Brioni, the island where Coco lives, and I was walking down one of the paths on the island, and all of a sudden someone said to me, "Hey, come here, come here." And I kind of looked around, and there was nobody there. Strange. And then he goes, "Come here, I want to talk to you." And in very kind of vernacular American English. And I looked over, and it was this massive parrot hanging upside down, turning his head in kind of a 360 and speaking to me in English and going, "Come here, come here. Listen, do you know Tito?" And I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't know Tito. Where's Tito? And Tito had passed away, so, and from that many years before, I guess they just recognize people's voice. So he took kind of 30 peanuts from me and threw them in his cage for later.
Vocile oamenilor, deci a luat vreo 30 de arahide de la mine și le-a pus în colivie pentru mai târziu. Dar în rest, nu am așa relații cu păsările.
Thank you for your story, and if you go out, maybe you'll have a loaf of bread with you, especially because we are in a town where we are not allowed to feed the birds. Maybe you can change that. believing or not believing, it's an intimate part, and you declare yourself atheist. Do you feel uncomfortable to speak about this part of your life? I'm also an atheist, and here it's a little bit weird in Romania to speak about not being able to believe deities or whatever you want to call them. So how do you feel when you are asked about this part of your life?
About which part?
About not being a believer. About being an atheist. Because you were speaking about that, you are giving interviews, parts of the interviews are about this. So how do you feel? Is it uncomfortable? It's just maybe from time to time when you answer questions about this, or it's just normal to, if you are asked, to speak about it? Thank you.
I'm not asked to speak about it much.
Nu mi se cere să vorbesc despre asta prea des.
I'm not uncomfortable
nu mă simt neconfortabil,
but I'm also not someone,
dar nici
I'm not, say as my father was, we could have called him an evangelical atheist.
Un ateu evanghelic.
I'm not interested in evangelism for my beliefs.
Convingerile mele.
I find it a little offensive.
Cred că asta este oarecum ofensator.
My beliefs are not very important.
Convingerile mele nu sunt așa de importante, nu sunt așa de interesante.
But apropos of that,
dar apropo de acestea, dacă vorbim despre asta,
for lack of a better word, art or theater or storytelling, I was just having a discussion with my pianist that I work with. We do a piece called Report on the Blind, which is Schnittke's concerto for piano and strings, and an adaptation I did of a book of the great Argentinian writer Ernesto Sabato, who Martin knew very, very well. And in this particular part of the book called Report on the Blind, Report on the Blind is something written by a lazy, slightly sociopathic, minor Argentinian aristocrat who believes the blind rule the world, which of course is true, but not in the sense he means it. He means literally people who have no sight rule the world. But of course, metaphorically, that's generally recognizably true. And we don't say get invited to certain countries because they find a part of the text very offensive. And in this part of the text, this character says he developed several theories about religion, about the existence of God, actually. He said, number one, God does not exist. Number two, God exists and is a bastard. Number three, God exists but falls asleep from time to time. His nightmares are our existence. Now, we can't do the piece in certain countries because of that. So I won't do the piece in those countries because it's part of the piece. But if I did, I wouldn't change the piece. But it wouldn't be to offend anyone or anyone's beliefs, because that's not of interest to me. It's because it's part of a piece, and in life I'm happy to go to church or temple or mosque, very happy. I like the time for contemplation, etc. Am I a believer? No. But am I a kind of serial offender? No.
Dar nu sunt niciun ofensator în serie. Pentru că nu presupun că știu eu ceva ce nu știu cei care cred. Dacă respecti oamenii și faptul că își urmează instinctul și în cazul acesta credința, am încredere în oameni să-și urmeze instinctul, nu trebuie să audă ce cred eu. De la primele experiențe actoricești și după atâtea roluri excelente, alte experiențe ca actor, regizor și designer de costume, acum în 2023, cum v-ați descrie călătoria prin viață?
I think I've led the most fortunate life I've ever heard of.
Cred că am trăit cea mai
I was a little overweight kid from a little coal mining town.
Am fost un copil ușor supraponderal dintr-un oraș minier.
The idea that I would be
de a deveni
acting in Vienna or in
de a juca la Viena sau de a regiza piese la Paris sau la Londra sau de a lucra la Berlin sau la Gütersloh sau Timisoara sau București sau Berkeley, California,
at least as foreign to me as they would be to you or anyone here.
Cel puțin la fel de străine mie cum mi-ar fi oricui de aici.
An incredibly blessed life.
Deci am avut o viață incredibil de binecuvântată.
That's how I look at it.
Așa o privesc eu.
What is it like now? It's like it's always been.
Cum e acum, ca întotdeauna.
I have great colleagues. I keep
am colegi
working,
extraordinari, continui să lucrez.
But I'm not sure I'll ever retire. Maybe I'll change my mind too.
O să mă retrag vreodată, poate că mă răspundesc cândva, dar nu văd niciun motiv.
Always gotten to do really exactly what I want.
Does an actor have to like the characters he plays? And what
este necesar ca unui actor să-i placă personajele pe care le joacă?
You know, it's very funny. I can't say which. Maybe you can guess. I'll put it this way.
Nu pot să zic
I only quite recently played someone I actually admired for the first time in my life when I was 69 years old.
Și am 69 de ani.
No, I don't like.
Nu-mi place.
Pretty much any of the characters
nu-mi place niciunul dintre personajele pe care le-am jucat. Niciunul la care mă pot gândi acum în repede. Poate că le văd charmul sau interesele, tristețele, partea tragică.
But none that I like, none that I would want to have as a friend.
Pe care aș vrea să le fac prieten.
Really, that I can think of. I mean, I sort of like Tom in the Glass Menagerie.
Îmi place Tom,
because
pentru că
he really loved his sister and he had his troubles.
Sora foarte mult și avea
I think obviously with sexuality, etc., and saying what he was sexually and everything, which is a pretty common thing in life.
Ceea ce e un lucru obișnuit în viață.
And the character in a film I did called Of Mice and Men, he's mentally handicapped, so it's not like I hated him or anything, certainly not.
Nu pot să zic că l-am urât.
But maybe only one character I ever actually admired, so I don't think it's important at all.
Deci nu
Not
cred că e o
even
condiție.
being John Malkovich when you've been John
Dar
Malkovich?
nici being John Malkovich?
No, you know, it didn't interest me at all.
Nu m-a interesat.
You know, because you have to understand,
Trebuie să înțelegeți.
I'm just a person. John Malkovich is a thing.
John Malkovich e o entitate
that I have no relationship
cu care eu nu am nicio relație.
So
deci
I wasn't any closer to that.
Nu am simțit mai aproape de
anything else I've done.
De acela decât de orice alt personaj pe care l-am jucat.
It's a job.
Și nici mai departe.
Work and spectacularly well written by Charlie Kaufman.
E o piesă foarte bine scrisă și regizată.
That's my main interest in that.
Asta mă interesează.
And a very good funny cast, Johnny Cusack and Cameron Diaz and Keener and very, very good cast, and Charlie Sheen was fantastic. But it never entered my mind as having something to do with me.
Mi-a venit în minte ca ceva ce are legătură cu mine. A fost greu să fiți John Horatio Malkovich?
Not really.
No,
I mean, it was very funny because one day Spike Jones, the director, and I were talking about something. We rehearsed something, and then after we rehearsed this little scene or some part of this scene, Spike said to me, John Malkovich wouldn't do it that way.
John Malkovich nu ar
and I said,
așa.
oh, okay, well, how would he do it?
Dar cum ar face John Malkovich?
So, it's just another part. No different than anything else.
Un rol ca oricare altul.
Should you embrace the
în lumina
change?
Inteligenței artificiale trebuie să îmbrățișați schimbarea.
Ride the wave or fight the wave.
I'm not sure I'm allowed to answer that.
Nu sunt sigur că am voie să răspund la această întrebare.
There are actually rules about that, which I just got emailed a couple days ago, and I wouldn't be interested in violating the rules. I guess I can say what I think about AI, I suppose, which is, if it's so smart, why can't it even do spell check?
Dacă e așa inteligentă, de ce nu poate să corecteze ortografia?
You feed it things and it follows along.
Introduci informații în ea și
I suppose computers do a lot of great things.
Cred că
I'm pretty sure they do a lot of awful things too.
Dar sunt sigur că fac și o mulțime de lucruri
groaznice. I'm pretty sure that young people now have addictions that are not healthy with regards to
nesănătoase
AI,
în ce
internet,
privește
and everything
inteligența
around
artificială, internetul și tot ce ține de acestea.
But as far as the strike goes and the union goes, first of all, I have no idea what the position of either party is. Because I've been busy doing this and haven't read about it happen quite recently.
Pentru că s-a întâmplat destul de recent și nu am avut timp să citesc despre asta, eu pregăteam piesa.
So I think the union has a pretty smart head and has some smart people in it,
în sindicat sunt niște oameni destul de inteligenți.
One hopes it doesn't
și sperăm
go on forever, but
că nu durează veșnic.
That happens.
Dar se întâmplă.
In life, people draw a line.
Oamenii trag linie la un moment dat.
Then you have to sit down and talk and find out how to erase that line between two parties. Or two parties,
linia dintre două părți.
Because there's also the writers' union. And without
writing, pentru că este vorba și despre scenariști.
I mean, I know some actors who write well, but it's not the general rule.
Și actori care scriu bine, dar nu este o regulă generală.
Let's hope it ends soon. But AI,
dar
I don't.
Inteligența artificială.
I think we found out in the last few years that
am aflat în ultimii câțiva ani
a lot of censorship happened, a lot of very
a
bad
avut loc
things happened.
multă cenzură, s-au întâmplat multe lucruri foarte rele, neobservate în multe țări.
That alarms me.
Și asta mă alarmează.
We allow it.
Faptul că am permis aceste lucruri.
Should not be censored.
Gândurile nu ar trebui să fie cenzurate.
Really not.
Chiar n-ar trebui.
And I think in Romania you probably know that well.
Și probabil românii știu bine acest lucru pentru că aveți istoria.
As do all the former Soviet states, but there is a history of it in America, believe me, very, very strong.
Da, și în America credem foarte puternic acest lucru. Și există dovezi.
I don't think that's going to happen. Like I said, they can't even do spell check.
După cum am spus, nici la corectarea ortografică nu se pricepe AI așa de bine.
Yeah, but it's a long time to not be able to spell someone's name that you've written to 5,000 times.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, I understand what they quote can do.
Înțeleg ce se poate face cu AI.
I wouldn't give it any more power
nu le-aș da mai multă putere
is absolutely
decât este
what is absolutely deemed only necessary, nor the people
sau considerat ca fiind absolut necesar.
And that's where the question lays, because those are the people who decide what is information, approved information, and who decide the Stalinist term invented by Joseph Stalin himself, disinformation. He invented it because he thought it sounded French. That's why he liked disinformation, which he could accuse the wreckers and stoppers, quote, of the revolution, whom he massacred by the millions, even though they weren't wreckers or stoppers at all. So I don't quite believe in its power and reach in the way that other people do, and wouldn't be unhappy to live without it. I had a pretty good life before there were computers. I know
am trăit destul de bine și înainte de computere. Știu că oamenilor nu vine să creadă asta acum.
What is your favorite music? Because I want to cover the information about you with your favorite music in order to allow people from Timisoara to listen your favorite bands.
Pentru că vreau să ascultăm împreună cu ascultătorii din Timisoara muzica noastră preferată.
Thank you for the invite, but we take off tomorrow morning for Varna in Bulgaria. And my favorite music, I like all kinds of music.
Muzica mea preferată, îmi plac multe genuri de muzică.
I grew up with a lot of different music, so music from my parents' generation, music from my
muzica din generația părinților mei, a mea.
Regular pop music.
Muzică pop obișnuită.
I mean, I probably have more of a fondness for interesting and intelligent lyrics,
versurile interesante, inteligente.
Or Tom Waits or many people like that, if we're talking of kind of modern music. And I like a lot of classical music. Tons of Mozart, which we had in our Casanova show. A lot of Mozart's greatest hits, really. I love the music in this show. I do another piece with a lot of Piazzolla, Desiatnikov, the Russian composer. I like my friend Alberto Iglesias, the Spanish composer, does pretty much all of Almodovar's scores, etc., etc. He did a wonderful score for a film, the only film I ever directed, called The Dancer Upstairs. It's a beautiful piece of music, I think. And as I said, I love the score for this piece, so Probably, if I had one favorite I had to pick out, it would probably be Schumann Piano Quartet, third
Poate
movement.
quartetul pentru pian al lui Schumann ar fi, dacă ar fi să aleg o piesă preferată.
You know, I suppose when I'm asked something like that, of course there are mostly only the answers, all the things you leave out that you should have said. But
rămâi cu ideea că au rămas lucruri pe care trebuia să le spui și nu le-ai spus, dar
the principle I would base my life on, and certainly at least my work life, besides the fact that I have to make a living like everybody else,
pe lângă faptul că trebuie să-mi câștig existența ca toată lumea, este
would be found in William Faulkner's Nobel Prize speech, really, when he won the Nobel Prize. And he talked about
a vorbit despre
this was, I think, in either 49, I think, or 59. He talked about the writers, the young writers of today, forgetting the problem of the human heart in conflict with itself, because that alone can make good writing, because that alone is worth writing about, worth the agony and the sweat. He must learn them again. He must teach himself that the basest of all things is to be afraid, and teaching himself that, forget it forever, leaving no room for anything but the old verities and truths of the heart, the old universal truths, without which every story is ephemeral and doomed. Love, honor, pity, pride, compassion, and sacrifice. And then he went on to say, talking about writers, until he does so, he labors under a curse. He writes not of love, but of lust, of defeats in which nobody loses anything of value, of victories without hope, and worst of all, without pity or compassion. His griefs grieve on no universal bones, leaving no scars. He writes not of the heart, but of the glands. And that to me is a very high bar, which we will consistently fail at. Faulkner did himself occasionally. But that's what I would say. I mean, I think he already said it very well, and it applies even more today than it did at that time, I would say.
În vremea aceea, aș spune.